hope you're ready for this.
Gonna be fun.
You will not stand in my way.
Frostborn, hunger. This pleases me.
I do not fear you, mortal.
Your soul shall be mine.
Don't make me laugh.
Needs a brew? Oh, I do. Feel a shredding, baby. Let the battle begin.
So hello and welcome. Oh, geez. As you can tell, I'm a little sick, but we'll try and get through this. Hello and welcome to the third episode of the Nexus Trolls, a podcast all about Heroes of the Storm. I'm your host, Linus Daz Kilius, and I'm joined, as always, by Mystic and Shiz. No, Shiz isn't here this week, unfortunately. He had a family issue coming up, so he will be back next week. Don't worry, he'll be back to troll the Nexus shortly. But today, we're going to have to do it on our own. Mystic, you okay with that?
Oh, yeah. I get to talk now because he's not here.
You get to get a word in edgewise, eh? Yeah, I figure this show is going to be a lot quicker than the last one, too, without Shiz here. Shiz, we love you, buddy. But we definitely get derailed when we've got our conversations, which are good things and bad things, too. But, hey, it is what it is. So, yeah, I'm up in here in Canada, and I hear you guys had an election in the States. I don't want to talk about it too long. It was a pretty surprising result, though, there. A big comeback, just like some of the stuff we saw at Blizzcon, too, eh?
Oh, yeah, definitely. A lot of people, are in a riot that Trump won, but, I mean, if Hillary won, the opposite people would also be in a riot, so,
it's quite a divisive issue. Yep, and maybe more importantly, pot was legalized in California and I think Massachusetts.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I saw that. Those were the two headlines when I woke up this morning. Trump is president and pot is legalized in California and Massachusetts. Go figure. Anyhow, like I said, this isn't a political podcast, and I definitely don't want to get into this. So let's just jump right into it. We got a ton of stuff on the docket today. We got to talk about BlizzCon, what happened in the last couple of days of BlizzCon, the announcements, the new heroes coming out, all sorts of new stuff. So let's start off with the tournament first. And warning, spoilers ahead. If you're planning on watching these matches that already happened, you can actually see them now on Twitch. But we're going to be talking about them now. We're going to be talking about the results. So if you are thinking of watching them, it might just be a good idea to catch the recording of this. And don't worry, it's going to be on YouTube, or you can catch it on iTunes later if you're watching this live. So, like I said, you can watch any of the past matches at twitch.tv/BlizzHeroes. They're all up there now. You don't need your virtual ticket anymore. I'm a sucker. I bought one because I wanted to watch them the day after, and I'm really happy I did, but you don't need a virtual ticket anymore. So what are your impressions there of the tournament, Mystic? Do you like it?
I really like the matches. However, MVP Black seemed to underperform a little bit. Everybody's expectations of them were so high.
Yeah, well, that was obviously the very big surprising bit. Just to kind of give everyone a bit of an overview, we're probably just going to talk mostly about the semifinals, which are on the Saturday. Those are the top four teams. So basically, the semifinals were Ballistics versus Dignitas. Ballistics is the Korean squad there, and Dignitas is representing Europeans. And then in the other bracket, or the other side of the tree, we had MVP Black versus MVP Black from Korea versus Fnatic again from Europe. So it was Korea versus Europe on both sides, and Korea was expected to win both brackets, but as Mystic said, MVP Black did underperform. Surprisingly enough, Fnatic pieced together a win over MVP Black. They won the series 3-1. It was a best of 5. And, oh man, that is one of the most entertaining best of 5s I've ever seen. So if you want to see some awesome comebacks, some underdogs coming through with a victory, definitely check out the MVP Black versus Fnatic semifinal there. On the other side, Ballistics, as expected, came through over Dignitas. A lot of people, I believe Shiz included, thought Dignitas were the only real chance of an upset. Turns out it was Fnatic who came through with the big upset this year in BlizzCon. So the other one thing too that I kind of want to point out too, because this is one of my favorite series that I saw was on the Friday. Actually, Fnatic versus Zero Panda. Fnatic had some pretty intense comebacks. There were some really crazy last moment intense endings. And again, I don't want to spoil them. If you haven't had a chance and there's a game or two you want to watch watch the series. It was a Group B deciding game, Fnatic versus Zero Panda. Again, this wasn't the semifinals. This isn't top 4. This is what got Fnatic into the Final Four. Fnatic versus Zero Panda. That was intense. Some crazy races to the finish. Check that out if you don't have a chance to watch every game. The Fnatic versus Zero Panda series is great. But also the finals were amazing as well. Unfortunately, Fnatic didn't quite have what it took to make it into a huge series there, but they did squeak out a win, I think, in the 3rd round to push it to about like the 4th round, and they ended up losing 3-1. It was pretty intense finals, but Ballistics, they're just on point and they're tough to beat. So what do you think of Ballistics there? Are they just that good, I guess? Or like is Fnatic just that far below them, or did they get lucky maybe in the semis?
I mean, I think that Fnatic is still pretty good. Like, they're a really good team. Obviously they beat MVP Black, even though they're on their off days. Like, even if they're on their off days, they're still a pretty strong team. So Fnatic, congrats to them for beating MVP Black. Them versus Ballistics. Ballistics just seemed a bit better. Like, I know Fnatic only took 1 game off of them, but they were very snowbally. Like the caster said, Fnatic had, they had a lot of momentum going into it, but when they faced that wall of Ballistics and they lost that first game, it didn't look that great for them. So, yeah, Fnatic performed really well, in my opinion, but they were just short of beating Ballistics.
One of the reasons that I think Fnatic went through MVP Black as easily as they did too, and this is, I gotta emphasize, this is a really surprising result. Not only was MVP Black expected to beat them, they were expected to beat them handily, potentially a 3-0, and Fnatic comes back with a 3-1. It didn't even take it to 5. They beat them in just 4 games. But the one thing about Fnatic that I think really played to their strengths is almost every game they ended up getting a lot of globals. And this just kind of shows the importance of globals in the game and how impactful they can be. Suddenly, even on smaller maps too, you can turn an odd man situation for the opposing team into an odd man favor for your team in an instant. And just being able to be all over the map at any time is crazy important, and it just shows how much that can help snowball yourself to victory or help you come back as well if you're losing the game too, especially on the bigger maps. So I gotta say, like, globals, I'm gonna start making sure I get better on them compared to what I have in the past. Your fall stats, even like now your EDC, which you never would have called them a global before with just Mosh Pit being so prevalent, but Stage Dive coming back into the meta, he is now a global. Even your Dehakas too. We saw a ton of Dehaka.
A lot of Dehakas.
Which was surprising, but I mean, he does offer that drag some amazing kill potential as well. So it was great to see that. So yeah, I mean, when they got to the finals, I noticed they didn't get their global picks as frequently, and it seemed just that Ballistics was ready for it when they did too. Yeah, what do you think about globals in general? You have any thoughts on that, Mystic?
Globals are very, very strong right now, and maybe Blizzard will look at them and be like, hey, maybe we should nerf them a little bit, so, if it's like one team has them, they don't just instantly win the game. A little bit of history in League of Legends, actually, there was a bit of a problem with those, and Riot, the designers of League of Legends, they decided, hey, maybe we shouldn't make them just global, like the entire map. They decided to make it like half the map, so it wasn't as strong. So I could see Blizzard somewhat going that route, but as of right now, I think they'll still be very strong.
Ironically, I'm just popping over to Hot Slogs quickly to see how everyone's performing. ETC and Brightwing seem to be the only two above 50% that I'm seeing offhand here. You look at your fall stats, you look at your Dehakas, they're actually like fairly substantially below 50%. So, I mean, like you said, in a coordinated play, if you get more than one global, I feel like it does make it more of an issue to be able to play against that kind of style. If you do get like your fall stat paired with your Brightwing and your ETC, that can be almost like a killer combination. But again, Blizzard has to look at this and be like, hey, well, is fall stat a problem? Maybe he's a problem in competitive play, but when you look at the more casual gamer, he's sub 50%, so what do you do there? I mean, I guess you can always try and nerf his higher skill cap talents or something, or maybe make his global range a little bit shorter, like you said. But still, I guess they got to be careful about bringing more globals into the game because they do synergize so well together, which seems to be, I guess, more of the issue. And it wasn't that much of an issue. Like when you're in competitive play, you've got your bans. If it's something you got to prioritize, I mean, it's unfortunate if everyone's prioritizing the same heroes, makes things a bit stale. But it is kind of healthy, I think, to have a little bit of that. On a similar note, I guess, it's the kind of thing you got to be careful with is something like stealthies, too. You don't want so many stealthies, you can have like a full stealth team or something. I mean, obviously, stealth has drawbacks, too, but it's the same kind of thing. Like, you don't want to overload on mechanics. But that being said, kudos for Fnatic for taking advantage of that and showing everybody how important a global composition can be. And good job, Ballistics, on showing us how perfect Heroes is played because they basically don't make mistakes. It was amazing to watch MVP Black. Every time we talked about MVP Black on the past shows, and whenever everyone talks about, even on stream and at BlizzCon, all they talk about is MVP Rich. Oh, watch MVP Rich. He's amazing. He's amazing. And like, I mean, it seems that MVP Black, the current analysis of their team is individually they're the best team person to person, but Ballistics has a bit more team synergy and a better team mechanic. So I guess that's what won out in the end, and helped Ballistics come to victory. But it was nice to see like a West versus East, I guess, kind of clash at the end. Keeps things interesting, especially for the home crowd and such. So there was a fair, even split, I think, almost, if you looked in the crowd, of those cheering for Ballistics versus those cheering for Fnatic in the finals. So I think we've got a pretty healthy, group of people cheering for everybody in the end.
Oh, there's one game I would like to highlight, which was I think it was the last game that Denial played, where they brought out a Medivh Stitches Malfurion on what was it, Towers of Doom. Oh, yeah. that was fun to watch. It was just the cheese. It was the cheese comp.
I think they lost that one, didn't they?
Yeah, they did lose because they got a lot of picks early, which is pretty good. However, they weren't able to get that many picks late, which is where the comp really shines, because if you pick off someone late game, their death timers are insanely high, especially on that map. So unfortunately, they weren't able to get those picks, and they just...
Yeah, it's a good thing to talk about, too, because I totally forgot about it. You just reminded me about it. But, I mean, we did see a lot of Stitches combination with, say, like a Malfurion, or like a lot of Gorge, anyways, what I'm getting at. A lot of Stitches eating the dude, bringing him to an unfavorable place, and then blowing him up. And funny enough, like, Gorge is often not taken except in these kind of like cheese combo situations where you're looking for those picks. And I don't know for sure, but every time I remember seeing Stitches and them take the Gorge, which seemed like almost every time, they never ended up winning. I even remember when, I think it's that game you're talking about, I seem to remember one of the final team fights. Like, I could see Stitches. He went in for a Gorge. He grabbed the hero, whoever it was, and started walking away from the team, ditched his two frontliner, like the people that were kind of holding the front line for him, went into the back line. The two front line got blown up. He belched out whoever it was he grabbed. I'm not even sure if they got the kill or not, but there's the problem with Gorge. Like you said, it's good for the picks, but in the middle of a team fight, do you really want to abandon the front line potentially and do that? I mean, I guess you can kind of be careful and all go back off together, but it didn't seem like the team was doing that. And he prioritized the Gorge in that case, where he should have been more maybe zoning for his team or creating that bit more of a wall in the front line. And ultimately, I think it was probably a foregone conclusion by then, but that was the final team fight of the game. And I think that maybe they didn't lose it for him, but it was definitely what I thought was a poor call on the side of them. But that being said, in the heat of the moment, we all know what it's like to get that Stitches Gorge. You see that guy there, you want to eat him, right? And
it was a nice try, honestly, from that cheese comp. It was like their last ditch effort. I found it really hilarious. I really liked to watch that game.
Yeah, it was definitely a good one. Okay, so that's the BlizzCon tournament. Sorry if we spoiled it for anybody. But let's move along, because there was a ton of announcements, and go figure, we even had a PTR patch basically drop the week after BlizzCon, so we have a ton to talk about, ironically enough here. So for the next bit, we're going to talk about the heroes that were announced at BlizzCon. So to everyone was so happy about it, we had Varian, Wrynn, and Ragnaros the Firelord, both from the World of Warcraft, announced in the opening ceremonies at BlizzCon. Did you get a chance to check out that cinematic? I remember I watched it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I watched it live and saw some of the crowd response to it, and I gotta say, BlizzCon fans, they love their Varian. As soon as they saw like what the lions and the armor and everything, they went nuts. And they went even more nuts, I think, when they saw Ragnaros pop up, especially when at the end of the cinematic, the developer or whoever it was came on and said, yeah, and Ragnaros is coming too. These are two characters I think everyone's been clamoring for months and even years now. Obviously, Varian is one of the most popular of the World of Warcraft universe. He's the High King of the Alliance. And Ragnaros is one of the first raid bosses I guess you would have come across in the Molten Core in original World of Warcraft. This is coming from someone who has never really played World of Warcraft, but I can appreciate it being in the Blizzard universe long enough.
Oh yeah, Ragnaros is really famous.
Oh yeah, for sure. So Varian, he's actually available in the PTR right now. You can go check him out. We're actually going to talk about some first impressions later on him. He's releasing next week, November 15th, live. So we're not going to have to wait long to get our hands on Varian. Ragnaros is going to be available early December. So it's going to be a little bit longer before we get our hands on Ragnaros. But a lot of people did get some first impressions and did get some playtime with him at BlizzCon. So Varian, the bit with him is he's supposed to be the first multi-class hero. He is a warrior / assassin, which is interesting because I guess the only parallel I can think I can really draw here is Kharazim, where your talent choices really affect his ultimate playstyle. And you can spec him into being, and Blizzard used the example of there's 6 ways to play Varian based on the talent choices you pick. You can make him tanky, you can make him bruiser-esque, you can make him more burst, you can make him a melee assassin. I don't know what the other 2 are, but basically you can kind of come up with almost any kind of combination based on his talent choices. And I gotta say, he's pretty interesting to play. What are your initial thoughts on this kind of multi-class hero here? Is this a neat thing to do? Is this gimmicky, or what do you think?
I think it's really needed. It is gimmicky. I looked at some of his talents and how he kind of works. I personally would have liked it if you made the choice at the beginning, because Varian, for those that don't know, right, at the beginning he has just his one sword, and whenever you choose like your heroic, right, it's either like taunt, Colossus Smash, or I forget what the other one was.
Twin Blades of Fury.
Yeah, that one. So when you select your heroic, like let's just say taunt, he brings out a shield and he gets 50% more HP, which is really cool, right? Because your tank wants more HP. And then if you get Colossus Smash, he gets more damage, and his sword just turns like to a broadsword. And the Twin Blades of Fury, he multiplies his sword into 2 swords and then attacks much faster, right? I would have liked that with more of a Kharazim aspect, where you chose it at the beginning instead of like your heroic, because if you want a tank, right, you're going to want that 50% HP at the beginning instead of, hey, halfway through the game, hey guys, I'm a tank now, just like, at 10.
Yeah, well, without jumping ahead of ourselves too much, but I'd like to talk about this a bit here too. Like I did get a chance to play him quite a bit in the PTR, and that was the biggest drawback I noticed as well. I feel like he becomes a later game hero, which, I mean, might not necessarily be too bad of a thing. You just have to be careful pre-10 with him, because his role isn't fleshed out. He's not very good at anything until he gets to that level 10, because that level 10 and the level 4 actually are the 2 kind of talent tiers that really define him and his playstyle. The rest of them complement those playstyles, but they don't necessarily define them. So from 1 till 4, no one knows what he's going to be. It's not like Kharazim. Like you're like, okay, he's going Blazing Fist of Fury, whatever it's called, or Iron Fist. Sorry. So you're like, okay, obviously he's going like damage or bruiser Kharazim, or if he's going insight build or healing build, and it's completely different right off the bat, and you know what to prepare for. Varian, you got to wait till level 4, and I feel like at level 4 you'll more or less know which way he's going, if he's going tanky or damage, but still at 10 he does have some additional options which make him really tanky or bursty or sustain. But we're going to go over just Varian in general in the final section of this podcast, so let's not get into it too much. But yeah, I think generally that's the first impressions with Varian. Is he's definitely a later game hero, and that versatility hurts in the early game, because you don't have those utilities in your kit until you get to level 4 and 10 specifically. Ragnaros is cool though.
Oh yeah, I love one of his ultimates.
Well, I'm not sure if you're talking about the Molten Core bit where you take over a fort, because that's actually his trait. So
that's right.
What Ragnaros does, and we're not going to be getting into too much details on him, but he's just a regular sized hero most of the time. He's a melee assassin. He seems to do pretty good damage from what we've been seeing. Again, it's tough to tell on Blizzcon floor because you get pro casters or really high level casters playing against just plebs on the show floor, and they're dominating. So obviously they're going to have really high damage output. But he's a melee assassin. He's got a little bit of sustain. But the really big thing about him, pun intended, is that you can take over your own forts, even if they're completely gone and annihilated. You can take over the spot where the fort used to be. You can actually take over the spot where enemy forts or keeps used to be as well, and you go into like a raid boss mode. You increase in size like tenfold. You become Ragnaros, the raid boss. Your abilities get amplified like crazy. It's called Molten Core's trait. You just D onto it, which is crazy to say because it feels like it should be an ultimate, and you get a second health bar, which slowly dissipates over time. So it's kind of like your timer / your health. But once you lose that, you go back to your regular mode. But all of your abilities are revamped. You get this huge stun, a huge area of effect, damage ability. And oh man, see, the thing is, I look at that, and the first thing I think is, if I see Ragnaros taking over a fort, it's time to ditch that fort and figure something else out until he...
Yeah, just run away.
Yeah, it's a longer cooldown. I can't remember exactly how long it is. It's over 100 seconds, though.
It's 100 seconds, actually.
Yeah, so it's not like you can just do this whenever, which, I mean, would be amazing on something like, say, like a Garden Terror. If you're just trying to defend against the Garden Terror, you just run back and forth between forts and you just, Molten Core up. But it is something that will have to alter the play of the opposing team, which is always important, too, and it can help save that fort, that keep, and deter the other team from going on to it. And it's almost like you can... I don't know for sure until we get our hands on them, but it feels almost like you can 1v5 the other team for a short period of time. I'm not sure if you necessarily want to, because once you come out of that Molten Core, you're probably a sitting duck, but at least you can potentially stall things out for a few seconds until your team gets there, in those situations where you're sitting there being like, okay, I'm sure we've all been there before. You're watching 4 people, 5 people on the opposing team demolish your fort, and you're like, there's nothing I can do. You can try poke a little bit if you're Li Ming or something, but there's really nothing you can do. Well, when you're Ragnaros, there's a lot you can do. You turn into Molten Core mode and start throwing down the thunder, or the fire, I guess in this case, since he's the Firelord. So pretty cool. I heard some Blizz developers talking about him. Apparently this was a tough character to
I bet.
create and balance. Not to mention there was a lot of iterations on him too. Like, the one thing they wanted to make sure, and this is always an important thing for Blizzard as a playstyle, they wanted to make sure that he felt like Ragnaros when they brought him into the game. And one way to make you feel like Ragnaros is make you a huge raid boss. Yeah, they said there's a lot of cases for those of you who maybe know a bit more about WoW or maybe play Hearthstone, because there's a similar thing there too. But I guess major executive Domos, or people are going to scream at me for butchering the guy's name. But anyways, there's a guy who they were going to have you play as him most of the time, and then basically you summon Ragnaros, which happens in the lore too. So they were talking about doing that, but the feedback was like, it doesn't feel like you're Ragnaros. Like, it feels like you're playing as Major Executive Domos, or whatever his name is. And they tried other things too, and just didn't work. They wanted to make it feel like Ragnaros, and it sounds like they've kind of accomplished that with this. So pretty cool. I'm sure he's going to be a popular one. Who knows if he's going to be over 200 I don't think it matters. Everyone's probably going to be rushing to spend 15,000 gold, 10,000 gold purchasing him. I'm sure he's going to be a cash cow for Blizzard for at least a few weeks. And you're going to be seeing a lot of Ragnaros in quick match. That being said, you'll be seeing a lot of Varian Wrynn too, I'm sure, when he pops next week. So let's move into the next section. Brawl from BlizzCon. Okay, so this isn't Brawl for this week, which we'll be talking about in the new segment. This is the Brawl that was announced at BlizzCon. It was Blackheart's Revenge, which is kind of cool, and you can actually play in the PTR right now. It's an attack defense style asymmetric map. So it's the first time you've ever had a situation where the objective for both teams is different. One team, okay, first off, it's shuffle pick. So you pick one of 3 randomly selected heroes, and you duke it out against the enemy team. One team is trying to have Blackheart destroy the docks, and the other team who's defending is trying to load you basically find cannonballs around the map, you channel them, you grab them, kind of like nukes, I guess, if you want to call it like that, and then you load them into the cans against a channel, and once you load them into the cans, it fires at Blackheart. If you get 5 channeled shots off at Blackheart's ship, you sink the ship. If Blackheart makes it to the end of the docks, he destroys the docks. So he's got a certain amount of time, it's something like around 4 minutes or so, that it takes for him to get from where he starts to where he finishes to blow up the Commodore, which is the defense side. So it's kind of neat. I've played it a little bit, and I actually really enjoyed it. My one big drawback on it is, though, is it's very quick. Missy, I don't know if you had a chance to play it, but like it's literally like a 4-minute brawl match.
What, really?
Yeah, and what I was expecting, because it's attack defense asymmetric, I was like, okay, well, maybe it's multiple rounds, right? So you have to try both sides. But no, you just get put on one side, and that's it. So you're either attack or defense, and you come out of it with a victory, and that's it. There's not 3 rounds like there was in the brawl that first came out with the Punisher Arena. This is straight up just one match, and it's pretty much maxed out at 4 minutes, because that's how long Blackheart takes to destroy the Commodore. So what do you think about this brawl? I mean, I don't think you've got a chance to play it, but what do you think about the idea in general?
I mean, when I first saw like the trailer for it, I thought it was a really good idea, and I was like really excited to get my hands on it. But when you say it's only 4 minutes,
I know
that kind of, I'm just thinking, wow, that's really fast. I expected it to be a little bit more drawn out, but I guess it makes sense. If Blackheart, it just takes him 4 minutes to sail in. If you don't stop him in that time, well, you lose. But if you do stop him in that time, then it's shorter, right? So
yeah, well, it's fairly quick, because you're running around. It's a very small map. You go around as a team. There's cannonballs all over the place. So one thing I noticed right off the bat is, there's several cannonball locations, several cannon locations they periodically spawn to during the course of the 4 minutes. But there's kind of 2 team strategies almost that kind of come about it, because you need to channel, and if you're on the attack side, you need to channel the objective. Basically, the defense team has to interrupt those channels throughout the match. So if the defense team comes in as a group of 5, the attacking team has to try and figure out where they're going to be on the map. It's a pretty small map, really easy to get around to. There's a transportation, like a little teleport point to go from the top of the map to the bottom of the map. But if you can kind of just zone them out and stall the game out, that's how you can win. So I played a bunch of games where we're like, okay, let's take us to there's 5. And I actually noticed we didn't have as much success on the defense side getting the channeled objectives and destroying Blackheart as we did as just staying as like maybe a 4 and a 1 or a 3 and a 2, because if you can split the objectives, almost split their team up, you can likely find yourself in being a one hero up situation, which is a little bit easier to win on than having all of your 5 in one spot and have that kind of like, it's short death timers and everything too. Everyone's running back so fast. There's no ground you really gain. You almost need to be a little sneaky. Go back, while everyone's team fighting one spot, send your Karazim up, grab a quick cannonball, fire it off. And that seemed to be a bit actually the more successful strategy from the attack, the defense side, where you're trying to destroy Blackheart. From the other side, again, it was just making sure that you didn't let those sneaky guys get around you and just zoning the whole time. It seemed fairly balanced. I played maybe 5 games. I think it was like 2 and 3 in terms of attack and defense, going either way there. So it seemed pretty balanced. It's a fun little map, but yeah, way too short. It is really fun though, and really intense. So I think I'll play it a bit. I just really wish it was more like a 10-minute game, or maybe the map was a bit larger, because it feels like the size of one of the Punisher Arena map. Like it's very short, really small from end to end. But it's still cool. The one thing that I think is a big takeaway from this though is that Blizzard really likes to have this outlet for being able to test things out. Like it's kind of neat. I wonder if these asymmetric maps, like maybe this is something they're thinking about bringing into like standard play, and this is a good place to test it, get feedback, see if everybody likes it, And if they do, then they're like, hey, maybe this is something we can spend time on the map next year doing, and they can go forward from there. So this is a good place for feedback and such, just Brawl in general. And all these crazy rules and such, it's a big test bed for seeing what might come into Heroes of the Storm in the future. You know what? Hey, if it doesn't work, it was just a Brawl, it was just for 1 week, right? Nothing gained, nothing lost, right? So it's a fun little place for things like this to happen.
Maybe I'm reading a bit too much into this, but maybe you're right. They're looking at this Blackheart's Bay. It's an attack and defense map, right? And it's asymmetric, so, kind of works like that. But you know what it's very similar to? Overwatch. So if an Overwatch map came out like this, that would be really interesting. And if they put it into standard play.
That's a good point. I never even thought about that too, because in Overwatch you've got like the defend the payload, right? Like you or escort the payload, I guess, on the other side of it. So that something like that would be interesting too. If they, I think it's only a matter of time before an Overwatch style map comes in, and most of them would be kind of that asymmetric feel to it. So that'd be interesting for sure. If you had some sort of payload and you had like Blackheart. In this case, this basically is a defend the payload. You've got Blackheart coming through over time. He progresses. It's like slightly different mechanics, but he progresses over time, and then the other team's trying to blow up the payload or stop the payload's motion, basically. So yeah, this is maybe this is an Overwatch map in Blackheart's clothing. It might be a little like a little devious thing they've come up here with to take people off the scent. Because if they did make this a payload map, I'm sure everyone would be like, hey, this is coming. This is a matter of time. But here, like, okay, it's Blackheart. Maybe you're getting them off the trail. But you heard it here first, people. Mystic's figured it out. He knows what's going to happen here. Come maybe next year. So maybe they'll announce the next BlizzCon. We'll be like, episode 3, Mystic called it. Payload maps. That's pretty cool. Okay. So let's move along from Brawl. We'll talk about the Nexus Challenge, because this is pretty damn cool. From November 15th to January 4th, so this is the Varian patch that's coming out next week, we'll get this Nexus Challenge. So this is super cool, because if you play 15 games with a friend, I think it's pretty much any kind of game, even AI games, as long as I think that you have to have like real real teammates, not AI teammates, but pretty much any mode. 15 games with a friend, you get the Oni Genji skin, spray, and player icon in Overwatch, which is a little cross-game promotion. But you also get Zarya. Now that's kind of cool. You get a hero. This isn't just like a Zarya skin or a Zarya portrait or something. And you also get the Oni Genji portrait in Heroes. But that's pretty cool, especially considering Zarya is pretty new to the Nexus. This isn't the kind of thing you're like getting like a Rainer or, like one of your like launch heroes that everyone's got. This is Zarya, who a lot of people probably don't even have yet. So, I'm interested because those of us who do have like a Zarya, I'm assuming you'll probably just get a gold equivalent, probably not like the full amount. But they've done something for this in the past. I remember there was the promotion recently where you got to pick like 1 to 3 heroes. Can't remember what it was for. But I remember doing that and I had the 3 heroes, so I got like 2,000 gold or something. So I imagine you'll probably get a gold equivalent if you already have Zarya. But that's pretty cool. And to sweeten the pot even more, you play 30 games, and this is over the period of almost a couple months too. So this isn't like you've got to grind out games over the period of a couple weeks. But if you play 30 games with a friend, you get Ariel, Greymane, Kerrigan, Li Ming, the Orochi Hover Cycle mount, and a 30-day freaking stim pack. That's a lot of goods for playing 30 games with a friend. So what do you think about this? This is pretty awesome.
Now, not to calm down the hype a little bit, but this is actually really good. You get the Zarya, you get Oriel, Greymane, Kerrigan, Li Ming, all that stuff. That is great, and it's awesome for new players because they're just like, oh, I don't have a lot of these heroes, and maybe I won't get them for like a really long time, but unless you spend cash, right? So, but this event is great. It'll get quite a few people to play the game, and I think that's what they're aiming for here because, obviously play with a friend. So while I was browsing around, the subreddit of Heroes of the Storm and like the Blizzard forums, so people are saying like, this is the people that already have Zarya are kind of mad because, they're giving away Zarya. And so there was also speculation that even when you complete this Nexus Challenge, even if you have all these heroes, you're actually not going to get anything if you already have the heroes.
I'd be very surprised if they did that, because, like you said, there's going to be a large backlash, especially they've got to make that pretty obvious out of the gate. And you know what? It's just like Reddit to complain about free stuff. So, I mean,
I know, right?
At the end of the day, they're giving us stuff. I know maybe like it does favor people who don't have all the heroes over like maybe the people who've been in the game a long time, but I almost guarantee I'd be extraordinarily surprised if you didn't end up getting in-game gold in exchange of these heroes. It probably won't be the full amount. It might be like $2,000 per hero, but hey, free gold's free gold, you know.
Yeah, free
and
gold.
Maybe, you know, 3 weeks ago you bought Zarya, now you're kind of pissed because you spent your $10 on Zarya or something. But you know what? At the time, it was a good decision for you. You got your use out of her. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do here is we want to grow the game. And getting more players into the game, getting people to bring friends into the game, it always helps. And to be honest with you, the last time they had this kind of similar thing, which I can think of trying to get people in, was the Recruit a Friend, where you had to, you know, recruit a friend, send him your like coupon code or whatever. He'd come in, you get him to level 5, and then you get like if you got 5 people in up to level 5, you'd end up getting like a mount. It was that the hover cycle mount, and that was one thing that everyone complained about there is they're like, okay, well the game has been out for a year, maybe a year and a half at that point. I've already got all my friends in this game. I'm not going to go recruit 5 people to get this hover cycle mount. Instead, I'm just going to make 5 dummy accounts, get them level 5 really quickly, get my hover cycle. And a lot of people are gaming it. A lot of people are smurfing. I know I made like 3 or 4 smurf accounts just to get that stupid hover cycle mount, which was awesome. So this, I feel like you're not going to get people gaming the system because there's really no way to do it. You just bring in a friend. Hey, I'll play 15 games with Mystic here. And then he's already in the game. You don't have to bring someone new into the game, right? Which is awesome because that would make this a lot harder to achieve if you're like, hey, play 15 games with someone who's sub-level 10 or something like that, which would, I guess, be the equivalent of something like the Recruit a Friend thing they used to have. So I think this is a good way to go, and this is getting a lot more heroes into people's hero pools. It's hopefully going to bring some people in. I know a lot of people are just going to play with their existing friends, but a lot of people might be like, hey, like, listen, like, I know you've been thinking about playing heroes. Now's a good time to jump in because you can get, like, and a lot of people were saying in Reddit too, you pay whatever it is for the starter pack, $30 or $50, that gets you like 12 heroes or whatever it is. You do the Recruit a Friend too. You get Sylvanas and Rayner. Then you get these 5-6 heroes here. You can get like 25 some odd heroes almost just for like the price of essentially like a box game, and that gives you a really big boost coming into this game too. So that's kind of a neat thing to think about. And then not to mention you're getting a lot of gold along the way in these stim packs and everything too. So if you bring someone new into the game and they're willing to shell out $30 to $50 or whatever the starter pack thing is, you can actually start up with quite a few heroes. And I remember it took me a long time to grind up my hero pool, but this is a nice way for people coming into the game to get it quickly and not heroes to shake a stick at too. Like we got Li Ming, we got Ariel, Kerrigan, Zarya, and even Greymane too. Fun
Those
to
are
play.
all good heroes.
Yeah, it's not like we got sluffable heroes here. I mean, most of our heroes in general are pretty good to play now. You know, with the exception of a couple here, they're not giving away Cho'Gall, that's for sure. But still, I think this is a really healthy thing for Heroes of the Storm. Excuse me there. I'll have to cut that cough out. But yeah, I think this is healthy for growing the game. Might have grown a ton, but I think it's definitely a step in the right direction, especially with so many heroes out. Okay, so we'll continue along. We've got their coming soon coming out in the future that are coming in. They didn't have any sort of release dates for anything, but still some interesting things that came out of BlizzCon. So these are just kind of your like tidbit throwaways. Who knows if they're actually going to come out? Last year, after BlizzCon, we had the announcement of Arena, which ended. Sorry, was it called Arena? Yeah, it was Arena, and then they ended up turning into Brawl, and it came out like almost like 10 months after the announcement. It changed, and a lot of it was probably iterated on a lot, and they might probably regretted making that announcement. So take these with a grain of salt because it's likely that a lot of these things either going to change or may not come out in the iteration that we're talking about them here. But still, pretty cool things. We're not going to go take too much time unless Mystic wants to get any specific ones. The first one is hero swapping in ranked. How cool will that be?
That'd be very nice.
So how do you envision this working, Mystic? And I'm trying to get you to talk for a second because I need to take a drink of water.
All right. Well, I'm assuming that you can pick, all your heroes in order, and then at the end of the hero selection process, you have the option to offer a trade with, anybody that you want to trade with, and then the other person accepts the trade. I'm assuming it'll work this way because they also have a similar system in League of Legends, and it's worked fairly well in the past. So,
I guess that was my question. I wonder how well it's going to work. I guess if they have a template already with League of Legends, that's a good thing to go by. My question, I guess, immediately would be is, okay, I'm in first seed. First question I always have if I'm banning and we've got first pick, do you play Samuro? Right. If you don't, I'm going to ban him, right? In this case, does anyone on the team play Samuro? The next question would be in my books is, does the first person own Samuro, or would he be required to own Samuro to pick him? Because I'm assuming the trades don't have to be forced, and you can't trade draft or pre-selection. So you might get into a situation where hey, let's say the first person didn't own Samuro, they picked them, assuming we're going to have a trade that that the person doesn't accept the trade at the end because of whatever reason. You'd have a broken situation. So I'm assuming they wouldn't allow that kind of thing. So I'm assuming you'd probably still have to own the hero in order to select them. Now, am I wrong here? How does it work in League of Legends?
I'm sure Blizzard could fudge it if they wanted to, but in League of Legends, right, both players must own the hero in order for the switch to happen. You have to own this hero, and you also have to own this hero to switch, right? So in this case, it would be if one person owned Samuro and the other person didn't, then you couldn't force the trade unless Blizzard decided to fudge that. You can actually pick any hero that your team owns. So I could totally see them doing that if they wanted to, but
that could get messy though. Yeah. Like I said, what would happen if you propose a trade or something after the draft and it wasn't accepted, or do you force a certain player to play a certain hero? That almost seems a little toxic or confusing and potentially leading to a lot of odd situations to me. So I imagine you'd both have to, like you said, own the hero, have him a level 5, have him so you can actually play them, and then you can decide later on. But that means that you still will have to actually own the player then in order to still make that first pick Samuro in this case, which isn't an ideal world, but still it does lead to additional quality of life changes for someone like me who might be hey, well, I'm not the greatest at Samuro, but the guy in the 5th pick is oh dude, Samuro's my jam. Be okay, cool. Just then I'll fill in. You just take, you can direct them what to take at the end, and then you can make the swap at the end. So I think it's pretty cool. A lot of people have been clamoring for this. It's so much better doing team league drafts for this reason too, because you can just pick whatever heroes make sense for the draft. I think it'll make drafting a little bit more logical, so you don't get those first pick Novas. You can you'd be like, dude, I'll pick Nova. Please don't first pick Nova. I'll pick her in the 5th slot, and we'll trade. Just pick something else, please, and we'll trade. So
first pick Malf for Nova, right?
Well, exactly, and then you'll be able to make those trades, which I think will make quality of life a lot better in just Hero League and I guess unranked as well. So who knows when that's coming? But like you said, it's good that they do have a template for it with League of Legends. So hopefully it'll be able to be come out sooner rather than later. So the other thing they talked about too is uncapped player progression and having your hero level or your player level, which most of us are probably locked at 40 now, uncapped. So it's just based, there's no upper limit to it. And it's based, they're saying it's going to be based on the total hero level. So you add up all the hero levels, you have, 10 of 8, you'd be 80. And that would be your total player level or whatever. And they said that there'd be progression rewards along the way too. So what do you think about this? I mean, I see nothing wrong with it. I just think that, more gold, more rewards are obviously the better. Maybe they'll just be tossing in stim packs or something, but they had nothing wrong with those. So I think it's kind of a neat change. And also I'm kind of sick of seeing everyone's portrait at 40.
Oh yeah, I think it's a great change as long as there are rewards along the way, right? Because if there isn't, it's just hey, I'm this number, that doesn't really mean that much, I guess, But if there are rewards along the way, I'm sure people will obviously grind for those.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, it's probably nothing you're gonna be focusing on. You're not gonna be oh, I gotta get my player account level 100 to get this specific thing. You'll just get there naturally playing games. I mean, maybe you'll be a bit more inclined because it's based on hero level to try out heroes that you maybe haven't gone to level 5 yet, because you can get them to 5 pretty quickly, as opposed to sticking to your your level 10 heroes, grinding them up. So yeah, it's kind of cool. Just a small little note. I don't think it's going to affect much One thing that is pretty damn cool, and something they've been talking about ever since they took it out of the rotation, is Haunted Mines is coming back.
Oh boy.
Yeah, hey, I loved Haunted Mines. The one obvious issue with it, for those of you who haven't been in the game long enough, I'll give you a quick overview because it's pretty simple to explain. Basically, it's a 2-lane map. After a couple of minutes, you'd have to go into the underground, the mines, the haunted mines. You'd go down, you'd kill a bunch of skeletons, collect the skulls, and basically once all the skulls are collected, whoever had more skulls had a stronger golem, which would be like basically this boss-style character pushing out their lanes. Now, the one problem with it is the golem would always push the same lane, and during each of these haunted mine phases, once they were over, he would respawn at the spot that he last died. So if he was on the core, after the next haunted mine phase, he would come back on the core. So obviously it was a little bit snowbally, but also tough to defend. Say, like, if you got a golem on the core, it's almost like a foregone conclusion he's going to destroy it after the next haunted mine phase. So people had some issue with the map, thought it was kind of broken. So one of the big things they mentioned that they're changing, I'm sure there's probably other changes to it too, but one of the big things is that the golems are going to switch lanes, and they're going to start respawning a fixed distance back from the core or whatever. So it'll basically do a full stomp from the beginning to end again, which I mean seems like an obvious thing. I don't know why you necessarily have to take it out of rotation for that long. That's almost like something you could have fixed on the fly, but there are some other changes to it too. I think there's more entrances to the mines. I think they're making 4 entrances now, and they've changed the actual mine layout a little bit so that the boss in the mines is in the middle portion. So they've just balanced out the map a little bit. I mean, Haunted Mines, I think, was, if not one of the launch maps, pretty close to one of the launch maps. So they've learned a lot over the past couple of years, and I'm sure they're going to be applying it to Haunted Mines. So Mystic, do you miss Haunted Mines?
Kind of. I mean, since I'm a really old player on Heroes of the Storm, like it was a maps where I had many laughs and many tears. Just sometimes the team would go over and just get wiped by the boss, and then you're like, well, I don't know, what can I do now? Or there's times where the boss, just destroys the enemy team, and then you finish them off, and you're like, oh man, we just won this game. So
for me, it's all nostalgia. I didn't hate the map. I didn't love it. Probably was my favorite, but I like to see them bringing it back in. This does kind of bring in to question, though, we've got a lot of maps. You're bringing back Haunted Mines. I don't even know where our map count is at now. It's got to be like 12, 13, somewhere around there. This is getting pretty crazy. I know for season play, they're going to be limiting the pools and such. But what do you think their strategy is going to be going forward here? Is that just going to be it, just limiting pools from season to season, from patch to patch?
Yeah, I think drawing parallels to their Hearthstone game, right? So they have they've retired some of their expansions, right? So for those of you that don't play Hearthstone, really, they have their base set for the Hearthstone cards, and then they have each expansion, right? And then so as time goes on, the more and more expansions, obviously there are more and more cards, so they retire some of the older expansions, and I think that's what they're going to do here. They're just going to be retiring some of the maps. They're going to keep it open for you to play in customs if you want, but I feel like they will just retire some of the older maps or even revamp them like they did Haunted Mines, right?
Which is funny because, I mean, I think we all kind of assumed Haunted Mines was the indication when they pulled that from the rotation and semi-retired it, that was going to be more common. But we haven't really seen that. I mean, we've seen maps go out of rotation for periods of time, but they've come back in, only after maybe a month or two out of rotation. So, yeah, they've got to do something, though, because the map pool is going to be a bit more overwhelming, especially for your newer players. It's hard enough to learn a few maps, let alone a dozen or more. So it'll be interesting to see how they do this going forward. But, yeah, I think retiring maps, limiting the pool at specific times is kind of the way to go. And I imagine that's how they're going to be doing this going forward. All right, next thing on the docket, they talked about clans. So they're very vague on this. But I guess from what I took from it is that you'd be able to form or join a clan and have some sort of like almost like mini internal clan stuff that you can do, like either like clan like mini like competitions or tournaments or whatever. Clan games may have clan channels. What are your thoughts on this? Like, do you have any insights on this clan system that might be coming in?
I mean, not to draw, more parallels to League of Legends, but they also have this thing. It's not called clans, it's called clubs, and I feel like it'll be very similar to that, where with Blizzard's clans, they'll have a clan tag that'll probably be in front of your name or behind your name, what have you, right? And then it'll just be like a community that you can form, that you can invite people to willy-nilly, and you just have like this group of people that you play with, right?
Hey, maybe we'll have a Nexus Trolls clan, right?
Oh yeah, we could do that.
I think it's kind of a neat idea. Like, there's nothing wrong with forming mini communities. Is it successful in League of Legends then?
It
was
was
like an afterthought.
Yeah, it was kind of a little bit hyped early on, but then it's kind of like an afterthought nowadays. I'm sure there are quite a few people that still use it, but the biggest complaint back then for the League of Legends one was that it didn't actually allow you that many members. It was like 100, and then so people complained about that because they wanted more than that. Yeah,
well, who knows how Blizzard's going to roll it out too. Like I said, they were very vague about the details, so we'll have to see going forward. They mentioned too voice chat. I'm not sure if they meant like in-game voice chat here as opposed to like the Blizzard kind of just general voice chat. I know they've made some improvements like just very recently to the existing Blizzard voice chat. We won't go over those here. They're just small like performance improvements and such. I mean, we talked about this last week, so we won't go into it, but voice chat might be coming. Party Finder improvements too. This is for if you're looking for a group, mostly because actually I forgot to put in the show notes here, but one big change you're talking about is ranked, like for Hero League versus Team League. There's going to be a big change coming to that in one of the coming seasons. And what I'll explain it here too is what they're planning on doing is making Hero League like just solo queue only, so you won't be able to duo queue in Hero League, and then Team League will be parties of 3 and 2 or 5. So one of the arguments here is, and they talked about it in one of their sessions. There's a lot of perception that if you want to do well in Hero League, the way to do it is to duo queue, and if you have like a solid pairing, you can do well. And I've found this anecdotally myself. They said that the statistics don't show there's much of an edge to duo queue players, but they want to just make it so that Hero League is more about your individual skill, and they take that kind of duo queue element out of it and push that into Team League. Now, I know Blizzard's always been about let's get more people into Team League because Team League is where they think like everyone should be. That's where you have more fun, right? But this is going to make an interesting dynamic too, because you might be queued up as 5, you might come up against a 2 and a 3 queuing pairing, and that might be a little awkward. I mean, maybe they're going to try and make it so it's 5 versus 5s and 3 and 2 splits versus 3 and 2 splits, but I'm not sure what I think of this. What do you think, Mystic? Do you think it's going to be a good thing for the game?
I think it'll be okay. But if they do like, oh yeah, we're just gonna go 5-on-5, right, or 3 and 2 and 3 and 2, that might skew the matchmaking time a little bit. And I know that nobody likes to wait, right? So yeah,
that's what I thought. That's the first thing I thought too. And by the way, I just want to mention too, they said in that session that this is something that they're going to try out potentially for a season, and if it doesn't work, they're just going to revert it. So this isn't something they're married to. This is something that they want to try out and see how it goes. But yeah, in terms of like skewing the matchmaking, the first thing that came to my mind, if you've got 2s and 3s that have to be queued together, have to be match made together to make that group of 5, that means you're going to have necessarily the same amount of groups of 2s and 3s that end up playing games, right? So let's say there's twice as many people are duo queuing as there are like tri queuing or whatever you call it, queuing groups of 3. You're going to have a much longer wait. And it's only going to snowball too, because those queues of 2s are going to be like eating up like just almost like insta queuing these people waiting, or sorry, the trio queues are going to be like queuing up almost instantaneously, whereas the duo queues are going to be waiting in line for a while, and it's this very asymmetric situation where I think it could be very bad for matchmaking. But that being said, maybe people will be like, you know what? Let's if we want to really queue quickly for Team League, let's find a third person. and we can just pop in really quickly, and maybe that'll kind of balance it out, having like almost an instant queue, which you'd imagine will happen either on the duo queue or the trio queue side, to make that work. So I think it's just a math issue. I think that might be the problem here, because you can't fill it out with solo queuers in Team League in this case, right? So I think it'll be interesting to see if that affects the end game here and the playability and just the queue times. But I mean, it's interesting, the same thing to see. I love duo queuing in Hero League. I hate Hero League solo queuing. I find it so toxic. People jump on each other. If you have like that other guy backing you up, at least you got like a less chance of getting a troll, but also someone else backing up your decisions. Maybe you're on comms, makes it a little bit easier to coordinate things. Personally, I find my win rate is so much higher with the duo queue partner, and I've been tracking it. But that's just my personal anecdotal evidence. Like I said, Blizzard's got different evidence on their end. So if this is something they want to try out, great. I love Team League. It'll be cool to play there more often. Like, I feel like there'll be a lot less toxicity even with 2s and 3s, because unless you get like the 3s jumping on the 2s or the 2s jumping on the 3s, you're probably not going to get a lot of inter team toxicity. So I think it might be good in the end for not the toxicity in Hero League, which will always exist, but Team League I think will be a fun place to be, and you'll have more people in there too.
Yeah.
Okay, so the reason we got sidetracked there is because there's a party finder improvement they're planning on rolling out. So they're going to make it easier to find parties of 3, parties of 4, parties of 5, or whatever to jump into something like Hero League. And they do have some of that already, where you can be like looking for a party and it like broadcasts on your channel and your friends list. But this, I guess, will make it a little bit easier, and who knows how they're going to do it. So a couple other things they talked about too. In one of the panels, it kind of slipped that Vol'jin is being worked on too. This is kind of like the Gul'dan slip from last year. Who knows what the time frame is on it? But hey, we might actually get our Nexus Troll finally coming.
Yeah, finally, the Nexus Troll.
So that'll be a great output. So we actually get a Nexus Troll in the Nexus. But everyone's always been clamoring for Vol'jin. I think he's one of the most popularly requested heroes. Him, Alexstrasza, Kel'Thuzad, I think, are up there. But it's nice to know that they're working on him, and I think it's one of those things where they kind of be crazy not to. Like, they're going to bring a troll in. It's pretty obviously going to be Vol'jin. And who knows, maybe they're just trying to work out his kit, and they'll get him into the cycle coming in soon.
Yeah, hey, I mean, Varian, when, I guess this is kind of spoilers, but not if you played Legion, but Varian Wrynn dies at the beginning of Legion in the cinematic, right?
Really?
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
So, I mean, now we have him here in the Nexus, right? And so, other spoiler is that Vol'jin actually dies too.
Oh, you're wrecking the world. Yeah. Well, hey, yeah, I mean, you know what? Maybe he's the next one on the docket too. Maybe they're going to keep going with this kind of like the continuation of the cinematic too, right? Because, they did the whole bit with the Medivh, Gul'dan, like tying in trailers to trailers. And the last part of the cinematic was just Varian jumping at Ragnaros. Who knows how that ends? Maybe you get some help on either side, and maybe a bit more of an epic battle, and maybe Vol'jin pops in there as well. But that'll be cool to see Vol'jin in the Nexus. It'll be interesting to see how they pull that off.
Yeah.
Some of the other stuff they talked about too, they're talking about reworking Dehaka, making him more of a solo tank. They specifically singled out him, but saying that they want to rework some of the existing warriors to make them more solo tanky. Do you think Dehaka is the best candidate here?
I feel like if they're reworking Dehaka, I mean, obviously, I'm an advocate of more solo tanks. We need more solo tanks into the game. We can't just have Murd and ETC be like the only good ones, right? Dehaka, if they rework him, I feel like that'd be good for the game, because it would also open up the path of, hey, we can actually rework the other warriors to be also potentially solo tanks. So
yeah, because Dehaka's kind of cool. I mean, one of the big downsides everyone talks about with Dehaka is his self-healing trait. He pops down for 2 seconds or whatever it is underground, comes back up, but you're kind of losing that front line when you're doing that. You don't want your warrior disappearing for a couple of seconds. It's the equivalent of being in like a cocoon or some sort of stasis, right? Like, that's just not good for the team in general. You need them to be there peeling, taking damage. But one thing they did say about Dehaka, they want to rework his ultimate, his adaptation, so that it's 100% healing. So like all damage you take will come back as healing, but also make it so that his burrow, or whatever they call it, he can pop up on demand. So it isn't like the full 2-second timer. You can come up whenever you want, which I think is a great way to maybe like dodge some skill shots, come back up, and you're right back in it. And who knows if they're going to add other things to it too, maybe some extra survivability to his kit. But he does have some good, like the drag is really powerful if you can hit that. So he does have some pretty impressive, potentially solo tanky talents, which can get picks and do some peels too. So
some really cool talent that I'd like to see maybe for Dehaka would be I don't know if you play StarCraft at all, but there's tunneling claws, which is if you burrow, you can actually move around a little bit underground.
Oh, that'd be cool.
I think that'd be pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that'd be a really awesome way. If it was kind of like Leoric's skeletal walk or whatever it's called, is where he goes into spooky Leoric form and gets away, maybe gets a little extra move speed too. That'd be kind of neat. That'd be a good escape for Dehaka too, which is another, I guess, thing that he's lacking a little bit of is his escape. I know his Dark Flight he can get through without being body blocked, but still that's not the same as a jump out or a slide out like your Muradins and ETCs, which are pretty crucial for having like that solo tanking kit being rounded out. So
yeah,
so it'll be good to see. Hopefully we'll see some more solo tanks in the game. Dehaka, I mean, we didn't see any announced really. We can talk about Varian a bit, but he's not what I'd call a solo tank for sure, even if you spec him to be that. Okay, so let's continue on. Holy crap, we're already at an hour. We thought this would be a much faster show without Shiz around. Turns out we can still chat like two schoolgirls at the prom. And so we'll get into some news. We might actually end up cutting the Varian Wrynn stuff because I know Shiz really wanted to talk about it. So we might just cut that out when we'll see how far we are after we get through the news. So that being said, I mean, I guess we've been talking about news, but it's been BlizzCon news. But let's talk about the generic news. And with that, we've got the bumper.
Someday, this will make a great story.
It surely will, Chen. Okay, so this week we've been playing Lost Caverns Brawl. It's ARAM, which for those of you that don't know, all random, all mid. So you queue up for this brawl this week. It's your standard map mechanics, nothing funky there, but your hero selection is auto select. I'm not sure offhand if it can pick any hero for you in the game or if it has to be someone you own, but it's a random selection. And it's a one-lane map, Lost Caverns. If you haven't played it before, it's been available in the custom matches or custom games for maybe 7-8 months now. But a lot of people probably haven't had exposure to it. I think it uses the tile set from Tomb of the Spider Queen. It's just basically a one-lane map. There's some globe generators, basically. You can't hearth back. Even if you did hearth back, the core doesn't heal you up at all. So you're more banking on your healing fountains, your globes for mana and health regen along the way. So have you played much of the ARAM Brawl this week there, Mystic?
Yeah, I played the 3 that I needed to get the gold because I don't have all the heroes. And to confirm, you can get heroes that you don't have because I don't have all the heroes, and I got one of them I didn't have.
Well, yeah, and ARAM, it's been a fan favorite thing. Like they're doing a little bit of fan service here, especially even when they launched Lost Caverns too. Like a lot of people would queue up in custom games, make like an ARAM map. They queue up on like Black Hearts and just make like a gentleman's rule. Everyone stays in the middle, no hearthing back or whatever. It was kind of like this little trend that started popping up. Then they released Lost Caverns, so you had this map. You didn't have to like use the gentleman's agreement. The rules set was already in place, and now they've put it into a brawl, which is kind of cool. And they've kept the feel with the all random bit to it with the single lane map, and it's fun. It's like a constant team fight. It's a crazy dynamic because there's really no soaking because just by the nature of being in the game and being alive, you're almost soaking. So the strategy is a little bit different. The one problem with it is, I guess, and this is part of the fun too, is that it's all random. So you have no idea what comp you're going to get. And they seem, I'm not sure if they've excluded any heroes. Like I haven't seen any Abathur, so they've excluded Abathur. But like you get heroes like the Lost Vikings in there, and the Lost Vikings aren't extremely effective on a one lane map, as we all know. So my question is, maybe they should have banned out Lost Vikings from being played here, and Abathur, if he isn't. Like I said, maybe he is, because I still haven't seen him come in yet. But you can definitely get superior comps to the other team. Like the Sergeant Hammer is extraordinarily powerful in this map because it's one lane, because you're always fighting together. You can protect the hammer a lot easier. They do balance it somewhat so that if one team's got a healer, the other team will have a healer. You know, the usual matchmaking rules. But still, you got Lost Vikings on one team, you got Hammer on the other, you got a Morales protecting the hammer and also healing up the hammer. Next thing you know, your core's demolished. Especially if you don't have any engaged heroes to counter the hammer in this case. So it can be difficult. And also, like, you don't know what you're going to get. You might get heroes that are completely against your play style too. I played Diablo. I haven't dusted off Diablo in a long time, and he was tough to get a handle on. One thing you have to do, make sure you've got hot slugs open, because you're probably likely going to be thrown on a character you haven't played in a while, and you might be a little rusty on his talent tree. But it's pretty fun. Do you have any strategy suggestions, I guess, for ARAM there at all, Mystic?
Strategy suggestions. I mean, most of it's a toss-up, but what you probably want to do is poke a little bit before you engage, because not all heroes have self-sustain, or will pick those talents. So if you poke them down a little bit, especially if they have no healer, and then you engage, then if you defeat them, then you can go grab all those health globes to help you sustain while they all come back up. So
yeah, and I think the health globes are one of the unsung heroes on this map too, in this brawl. I noticed teams when I was playing with that we were more effective is if we went together to get those globes, because if you get a globe for your whole team, that's a lot of extra mana, a lot of heals spread around the whole team, as opposed to just getting it by yourself. And if you can coordinate grabbing the globes, because they're good for both teams, right? So if you can get the globe, you're denying the other team that additional health and mana. It can really turn the tide of a game, and especially if you're on a mana heavy hero, you gotta be really mana careful, because you can't hearth back. You can tap up, you can get the globes, but you gotta be really careful with when you're using your abilities. You don't spam your abilities in this case, because you don't necessarily have that kind of regen capabilities of going back to the core. So my advice in particular is definitely be careful. Don't necessarily pick the talents that are just the ones that are the given ones. Try and make some smart choices too. I mean, a lot of people do pick it anyways, but I got stuck with Lily. I hate Lily. I hate playing her. It's so boring. But just picking her Conjurer's Pursuit off the bat. I know a lot of playstyles would pick that anyways, but just getting the additional mana regen, and there's tons of globes everywhere. You're going to be getting a lot of globes. Helped out a lot. I feel like a lot of the health regen talents too, because you're going to be having these long sustained fights. Just kind of planning for that help out a lot, and just being careful. Like if you're a Vala, for instance. Don't use your full QEW on everybody to finish them off unless you have that pick, because you're gonna run out of mana fast, and you can just do a lot of sustain just doing your auto attacks. So just focus on the auto attacks and just choose your mana wisely, because it's gonna be depleted so fast, and there's no option because you're in a brawl the whole time. It's not like you're laning where you can wait for your mana to kind of come back, not use your abilities. You don't have that opportunity in this case.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the brawl. PTR patch notes. We had a patch drop, and this will probably be our final segment. I think we are going to skip the Varian Wrynn bit. We're just going to go over some of the highlights, because there's some pretty cool ones here. First bit, they'll make those people that don't have Leoric happy. Leoric is going to have a price drop once this PTR patch hits, and it hits next week, by the way. It's the Varian Wrynn patch. So it's a price drop from 10,000 to 7,000 gold. So that's obviously nice money in our pocket, getting the hero prices down. Also, obviously, the big part of the PTR patch is Varian Wrynn coming to the Nexus, which we've talked about before. There's a lot of little things in here, including some hero reworks. Let's touch on some of the smaller issues, or the smaller things that came up. There's catapults are now going to be white on the mini map. Now, I was playing the PR. This is pretty darn cool, because you see, if you just do a quick glance on your mini map, you see there's minions on the core. Now you'll know if they're catapults and they have to be addressed right away, or you'll know if the catapults are stacking, right? Because you might see 4 dots. You're like, okay, it's a lot different if those are just 4 regular minions or if those are 4 catapults. So I think this is a nice quality of life change. Pretty cool little visual upgrade, and hey, why not, right? So that'll be pretty cool.
I've lost many a game where my team is pushing up mid or something, and then all of a sudden your core's at like 30% health, and you're like, wait a second. So you look back, and there's like 8 catapults on your core, and you're like, oh, that might be game.
Yeah, they can burn a core down fast. Well, it kind of reminds me, there was the game Zero Panda versus Fnatic. I think it was their first game. And I don't want to spoil it too much, but they pretty much had an ending moment like that. Like there was a team fight going on, and then next thing you know, like the core has just got minions or Zerg or whatever was pushing there, and next thing you know, your core is done. So it's the kind of thing that you got to keep an eye on. This makes it a little bit easier to keep that eye on it. More information is always better in this game. So the next big thing, stealth, is getting a big change to it. In particular, how you reveal stealthies. So reveals, now that would be like Tastar's Oracle, for instance, or any sort of like anything that people can talent into, like Peekaboo by Brightwing, etc. That will just reveal stealthies. It won't break their stealth. I haven't had a chance to see it too much in the PTR in practice. I'm not sure if this means they're not targetable, but basically as soon as they leave whatever the zone is, or that effect, like the Oracle expires, they'll go immediately back into like full stealth, full undetectable stealth mode. So this is kind of an interesting change. To be honest with you, I don't see why they really did this. I liked being able to break stealth on heroes. I guess maybe this is in response to Samuro losing a lot of his utility, like being able to break his stealth if he's jumping in on somebody. But yeah, I liked it where, these reveal talents would actually break stealth, and you'd have to, as Nova, run away and not take damage to re-engage your stealth, or Samuro wait for your Windwalk to come back off cooldown. So what are your thoughts on this?
I'm not really a big fan of this change, mostly because, I don't like getting one shot by those Novas or Zeratul or anything, but I think this is a buff to stealthies because, so Samuro gets movement speed boost as long as he's in stealth, right? So if you use something like this to reveal them, however they're still in stealth, that means that he retains his movement speed boost, along with Nova if she picks her first talent. I don't remember what it's called, but basically it increases her movement speed as long as she's in stealth.
I think it's Covert Ops. Yeah.
Oh, I think that's the one where he increases the slow, but yeah, I don't remember what it's called. But yeah, so if you reveal her, but you don't actually break her out of stealth, right, it means that she's still moving insanely fast while in stealth, but you can see her moving really fast.
Yeah, and to me, these reveal talents were the hard counters to stealthies, and this makes them less of a hard counter. So it does make me question why they brought it in here. A lot of people hate the stealth mechanic to begin with, and this is going to make it just a little bit more annoying if you're not the stealth character. If you're the stealth character, you love your Nova, you love your Samuro, this is going to be great for you. Another buff to stealthies, too, is that, it's a small buff, but character stealth bonuses, like your movement speed increases, like we were talking about, you can talent into as Nova or you have as Samuro, they're granted to you if stealth is granted to you by a different character. So if Tyrande uses her Shadow Stalk, for instance, and there's a Samuro or a Nova on the team, and you weren't stealth to begin with, you'll get your movement speed buffs. Any sort of stealth buff, like while in stealth buff, you'll get those as well. So that's an interesting change as well. And like I said, just that small little buff. There's not too many talents that make people invisible. I think it's just Shadowstalk and Medivh's level 20 stealth talent where you can make someone stealth, but still they do get those benefits to being in stealth. So yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything else there, at least nothing that I can think of offhand.
Can you imagine, so Hammer has ambush and she shoots somebody with it, but then she gets Shadowstalked and gets the bonus of ambush again.
I guess true. I didn't even think about Hammer's stealth bonuses too. So, yeah, that's true. So the mini buff to Hammer, I guess, as well.
Mini buff to Hammer.
So along with these stealth changes to scouting drone now reveals stealthy. So I guess it's a little bit of a counterbalance. So we don't see that taken all that much, but maybe we will now. Malfurion, Raynor, and Morales, who have always had scouting drone, they now will reveal stealthies that come through the scouting drone area too. So that might be kind of, you hide in a bush, stealthy walks by, you reveal them. It might be like a nice way to avoid ganks by those Novas coming out to to pinning shot and snipe you. So that's a nice little change. It'll be a nice quality of life, I guess, for those characters that would like to have that extra protection. Seasoned Marksman 2 is no longer going to be capped, and it can be activated for a 40% increase in attack speed when the quest is finished, as opposed to the 30% attack speed before. So the heroes this affects: Artanis, Falstad, Raynor, Tyrande, Zeratul, and Thrall. Obviously, this affects some heroes more than others. I think Raynor and Artanis, and in some cases Falstad, are probably the ones that take this the most often. And I don't play a ton of Zeratul. I'm not sure how common Seasoned Marksman is for Zeratul. But this uncapping of it is an interesting bit, because they implemented that maybe 6-7 months back. Now they're taking it away. So this allows the scaling to continue no matter how long the game goes, which is pretty interesting. So you get the increased damage throughout the game as the game goes along, but you also get the 40% increase in attack speed. So this is a pretty big buff to Seasoned Marksman, and begs me the question is why they're bringing this in here. I don't see any obvious reason for it.
Yeah, I don't really see an obvious reason why they'd bring it in here anyway, or either.
Bring back Raynor into the meta?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, the only thing I could see here was, like, if they just did it on Raynor, it might bring him back into the meta just because, you know, he can do that. What I see here, though, is that Falstad and Raynor are probably going to be a lot stronger. I mean, Artanis, yeah, it might work, but, you know, he's melee. He obviously has to get in your face. Tyrande doesn't usually take that talent, so Zeratul and Thrall, I don't really see Thrall taking that talent. Zeratul can, I guess. But yeah, Falstad and Raynor, they're going to be very strong late game, so they just have that extra safety net. So at the end of the game, or near the end of the game, if it lasts that long, you're going to have, like, they're going to be doing absurd amounts of damage if they get that stacked.
So maybe this is just like a mini buff, because Artanis, Falstad, and Raynor could arguably, obviously, potentially use a bit of a buff for these talent choices. Like Falstad, we know Mage Falstad's pretty powerful. Maybe this is a bit of a buff to the auto attack Falstad, which we did actually see quite a bit in competitive play over the weekend. But Artanis to Raynor, like I said, maybe getting him back in the meta. So maybe that's just a way to buff them. Like for Thrall, for instance, Tyrande, you're almost never going to take these talents, especially Thrall. I think it's competing with one of his key lightning talents on 1 or 4. So you'd be crazy to take it just because there's such auto picks for Thrall. Well, I didn't put it in the patch. Or sorry, I didn't put it in the show notes here too. But Artanis, this sounds like in the PTR. I think the last PTR kind of iteration, they had this thing that someone noticed. You can blade dash. Blade dash, is that what his little dash thing's called?
I think that's what it's called.
So blade. It's funny. Usually I know these things. As soon as we get into the show, it's like I'm like an old mom, like calling everything by the wrong name. But yeah, okay, you do your blade dash out, and then you can do your little prism, and you can do it while in the middle of your dash to like swap your position and like add a lot of extra utility, which you couldn't do in a live game. And this was noticed. It was put up on Reddit. The Blizz developers were like, okay, like this isn't something that's going to go live. Then at BlizzCon, they say, yeah, this is going live. We're going to make it so that you can use your prism in the middle of your blade dash. So that's pretty cool. And they showed some video of it too. They showed one of poor Asmodan, Artanis sweeping out, throwing out his prism, and swapping him a huge distance. I mean, this has the negative effect of putting Artanis potentially way out of position, but that was kind of cool. And they also have these plays where because blade dash can go over terrain, you'd jump over terrain, throw your prism out, swap him on the other side of the train, basically totally like isolating him, and then you'd still come back, right? Back on the other side of the proper side of the train. So it seems like it's obviously a very high skill cap move, but it might lead to some pretty interesting Artanis play. And I like playing Artanis personally, so this is going to be something fun to play with. What do you think? Are you going to get your Artanis dusted off out of the closet and bring him back into your repertoire?
Oh yeah, I really like playing Artanis when he first released. I got the Legacy of the Void, so I got Artanis for free, and I was really, really happy about that. So I played quite a bit of Artanis when he was first released, and yeah, what really sucked was that he didn't really have an escape. He could Void Prism if he had a good target, but yeah, I think this will be a really good change because it will increase that skill cap, and like really good Artanises are going to be just like all over your back line.
And everyone loves those cheese plays too. Like all you have to do is land one of those, and your team's going to vote for you as MVP, guaranteed. MVP play right there. Yeah, I'll be cool. I'll love to see some moves, especially if he starts coming back into competitive. I don't think we saw any of them over the weekend at BlizzCon. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't see a single game with Artanis. But it'll be neat if this gives the extra bit of utility. And I think, like you said, the problem with Artanis has always been he commits to a fight, he's there until it's done. Like there's no easy way to disengage. His survivability is just so importantly hinges on his keep auto attacking. There's no opportunity to easily run away. So this might make it, if nothing else, a little bit more fun and quick match. Maybe he'll bring him into competitive too, but who knows?
Yeah.
So we also have some pretty much hero reworks and a lot of updates that we had in the patch notes too, which is surprising coming so close out of BlizzCon and makes it tough for us because there's so much we have to cover now. So Illidan, Zeratul, Kharazim, and Thrall are the ones we're going to talk about. Some of them got more reworked than others. So we're going to leave some of these more detailed analysis for when Shiz gets back next week too, specifically Zeratul, because I know Shiz loves his Zeratul. Any of these you want to talk about in particular there, Mystic, to start us off?
I mean, I can gloss over them real quick with my opinions, I guess.
Sure, let's start with Illidan then.
All right, so Illidan, he got a bunch of buffs to his sweeping strike, so I think more of his talents are going to be leaning towards that. He got a little bit nerfed on Mark for Death, which is the talent where if you Q a target, dive a target over and over, it will just do more damage. Other than that, he's more or less the same.
Well, I got the developer comments in the PTR patch notes was they wanted to make more competitive talent streams for Illidan. Yeah, like you said, they seem to be buffing more of his sweeping strike bit. And when I was playing the PTR, I was coming across, and it's so hard to judge based on play you see in the PTR, I was coming across some God mode Illidans. And what they were taking Battered Assault on 1, and they were taking the ability here, let me just quickly look it up, on 7, Thirsting Blade, which gives you additional healing when you're when Sweeping Strike's damage bonus is active. So on the 1 you get longer Sweeping Strike damage bonus active because of this PTR patch note bit. They're taking Blades of Azanoth at 16, which is again kind of buffing that Sweeping Strikes build. And what I was finding is they're getting a ton of bonus damage from their Sweeping Strike as long as they can hit 2 targets with it every time. And bonus damage on someone like Illidan means bonus healing, and it was nigh impossible to kill the bastard. He was going 1v2, 1v3 in a lot of cases. We were just trying to focus him down, and it was near impossible. We sat there being like, why didn't that Illidan die there? So I said like it might be just the skill level of the Illdans I was coming across, but I was seeing a lot higher damage numbers than I'm used to seeing out of Illidan based on this new Sweeping Strike build that I was seeing in the PTR. So it'll be interesting to see. Like we'll have more analysis on it maybe next week. We'll get a little bit more idea of if this is the case or if it was just kind of an aberration from my experience. So Zeratul too. MVP Rich actually chimed in and said he likes the new changes. What do you think about the new changes? Do you want to kind of go over in general what they are there without going into like the specifics there, Mystic?
For Zeratul?
Yeah.
Right. So I feel like, I looked over his talents a bit, and it looks like he got some talents that make him go for a more blink oriented style of play where, you know, all your auto attacks or a lot of the stuff that you do actually increases your mobility, which, you know, the devs say, hey, we're going to make it so you really feel like this Dark Templar Shadow Assassin. And so they increase the damage of his like burst, where if you attach the Singularity Bomb on a target, then he deals a lot more damage to the target, and then all the rest of the stuff that he does makes it so his blink comes off of cooldown faster. So you're never going to catch this guy. He's going to come in, he's going to do a lot of damage. Yeah, that sounds actually kind of insane.
Yeah, and coming into the PTR, I came across a lot of Zeratul. Didn't see a ton of like OP-ness to his kit. He seemed like the old Zeratul again, just with a couple new tricks up his sleeve. So it'll be interesting to see how he shakes out. But I think this is a pretty good rework just to kind of give him a fresh coat of paint. But again, I know Shiz will have some pretty good insight when he comes back next week. And Octoboss in the chat, he says Illidan changes are irrelevant because Varian is the new Illidan, and I guess we'll talk about Varian a tad in a second. We did gloss over him at the top of the show, but yeah, some of his kind of auto attack sustain build, it does kind of feel like that Illidan-ish, almost like Greymane-ish kind of assassin where you can close the gap and really do a ton of damage. Okay, how about Kharazim? Kharazim got some interesting talent updates too. The big thing that he got was his level 4. He now gets little ghost buddy. When he can use it, it'll be an activatable, like just the one button there, like a utility button, where he can put out. Let me just pull up to see what they are here. Kharazim. So he gets 3 different allies, spirit allies. So there's spirit ally. You can place a spirit ally. Basically, it's almost like a totem, but it looks like a little version of Kharazim. That heal allies in a large area for 2% of their maximum health every second for 10 seconds. So basically like a healing totem. Earth ally. Place an earth ally that reduces heroic basic attack damage to your allied heroes received by 50%. Has 400 health in the last 10 seconds. So again, like another totem, but this one is for reducing heroic basic attacks. And then there's air ally, which grants vision of a large area around it for 40 seconds, has 70 health, yada yada. So these are almost kind of reworking Healing Ward, Foresight. Like they're giving him kind of like similar utility to what his previous level 4 talents are. You get the reveal, you get the damage mitigation, you get the extra healing with a Healing Ward type thing. But the neat thing that they showed this at BlizzCon too is that he can radiant dash to these targets now because they're allies. So he can radiant dash to an ally, which is kind of a cool little utility for escape. So they showed off Kharazim tossing his spirit ally on like one side of like some terrain, like radiant dashing over to like a Vala, destroying her, and then popping back, radiant dashing back to his ally. So it might give some like neat kind of like cheesy plays you can add to it. It helps the escape though. One thing that Kharazim always needs, that radiant dash target. So this gives him an additional one that he can use in utility wise. So that's kind of a cool bit. And there are some additional updates too. He did get a little bit of a boost to Iron Fist. He gets some movement speed buff too. They're trying to make more of like a bruiser Kharazim, geez, now I'm sounding like Shiz. Kharazim, a bit more viable. So they did give him a little extra damage. They've changed some of his talents here and there. Do you have any thoughts on Kharazim too, without going into the details here, Mystic?
I feel like his spirit allies, yeah, they're pretty cool. They really set up some good escape routes. Some of them are like sideways buffs or I guess changes to the existing talents like Healing Ward, Foresight, yeah, I feel like this will just help his mobility overall.
Yeah, I think this is just kind of like a fresh coat of paint on Kharazim. Like from what I've been reading, what I've been seeing in the PTR, he's not significantly stronger, significantly weaker. He's just like it's like a lateral move just to give him a little bit more utility. Like those allies, yeah, they give him a target to jump to, but didn't really change his talents too much. They did rework a little bit of how his healing talents work on some of the levels. And like I said, Iron Fist got a bit of a buff, so they want to try and get a bit more bruisery role. But in the PTR in general, it's kind of hard to like get a good grasp on a character because most people are just trying stuff out and they don't really take it as seriously too. So again, we'll have to wait till he hits live to get, I guess, a better good indication how Kharazim's going to fall.
Yeah.
So Thrall, we've got changes. He didn't get a rework, but they changed his ultimates. They slightly nerfed Sunder and slightly buffed Earthquake. Now, Earthquake's one of those ones that I've always wanted to see work in some situations. And it's a tough one because Sunder's just been so good as an engage, so good to split up a team, isolate targets. So what they've done here is they've reduced the stun duration from 1.25 to 1 seconds on sundering, which might not sound like a lot, but that's 25%. That's a significant amount of time. And Earthquake, it now deals 50 damage to heroes with each pulse. And it also triggers your Frost with Resilience, which is kind of cool too. So if you're in a big fight, and there's 5 heroes, every time it pulses, you're essentially going to get a free heal out of it too as Thrall. So it does increase his his sustainability, his self-heal, and it gives a little bit more damage output too. So do you think we're going to see Earthquake taking it all now?
I feel like Earthquake will be taken more. I mean, it does a little bit of damage, but I think the key thing here is it triggers Frostwolf Resilience, which means that in a fight, Thrall will be much, much tankier, because I'm pretty sure what it means is each pulse will deal damage, which means all of those will proc his healing.
Yep.
So...
yeah, I think it's a good change to it. The question is it enough? Because Sundering, as we know, is just such an important part of his kit. Earthquake's great, though. Like, I've played in games, and I'm sure you have too, where the other Thrall surprisingly takes Earthquake, and you're sitting there trying to run away, and you're just moving through molasses. And that can be frustrating as hell. It's not a great engage tool, but it is a good, like, defending the point type utility ultimate too. And the one thing I've always wanted to see work too is having a Thrall comp with, say, like a Rainer or anyone with Executioner talents too, because those would proc like indefinitely almost too, because everyone's gonna be slowed the whole time. You can get insane damage out with like an Executioner Earthquake kind of combo too. So maybe this will bring my hope and dreams of Executioner and Earthquake coming out as a strategy into the Nexus. But again, this is one of those things we're gonna have to wait and see. Sundering has just been ultimately just the better pick in 99% of situations, and I imagine it's just utility and displacing heroes as well as the stun is still there. So the question is, will Earthquake, is this enough of a buff to make a difference? The devs in particular say they're concerned about buffing Earthquake, because I think this is similar to the situation they got in with Falstad's Gust back in the day. I remember people used to always take Hinterland's Blast, but then suddenly Gust started coming to the meta because people understood its utility. And the devs always said they didn't want to buff Gust because they knew its potential. And they feel like it's just kind of a similar situation with Earthquake. If you buff it too much, they don't want it to become too overpowered. And then suddenly you got the reverse situation. Everyone's always going to take Earthquake, no one's going to take Sundering. So they're looking for making it more of a choice as opposed to like a given, which ultimately it'd be nice if all heroics were, and it sadly isn't the case, especially with Thrall historically.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we're getting here long up in the tooth here on the show, an hour and a half, but let's talk a little bit about Varian. We were going to go over all his traits, abilities, and talents and everything, but we're going to save that for next week when we have a little bit more time for him. As we mentioned off the top, he's our first multi-class hero, so he's warrior/assassin. Maybe what we can comment on here is how strong we think his different builds are, because I've tried, essentially, I mean, Blizzard says he's got 6 different ways you can play him, and as we mentioned before, he's got, at level 4, an important decision to make. At level 4, he basically can choose between making his little charge into a stun, which was typically a slow, so adding a huge bonus to CC on a very short cooldown, or he can basically create his parry, which is his W ability, which would typically just block basic attacks for 1.25 seconds, into a complete like Medivh style protection. So remove all damage from him. So obviously you can see what here you got your CC versus your tank ability and damage mitigation. So right off the bat there, the problem is with Varian in general, and one of the things we were clamoring about, we talked about last episode too, is it'd be great if we had another solo tank in the game. And what I feel like with Varian, even if you take all of his tanky abilities, yes, you can make him pretty tanky. He's kind of high skill cap because you got to do a lot of timing, because all of his tankiness kind of hinges on his Medivh style parry upgrade at 4, where he does become invulnerable to all that damage, and making sure you can time that properly. But you're suddenly sacrificing his CC to get that specific upgrade on your W. He doesn't have a stun. He's got a couple of slows on his Q and on his on his E. So I feel like he doesn't do enough well to take on that solo tank role. He doesn't have a solid escape, which makes him, in my mind, more effective as a bruiser or a burst damage character. So at level 4, you can turn his charge, which is kind of, you want to think about like Diablo's like little charge, but it doesn't push the character back, into a stun. It's on a fairly short cooldown. I think it's 8 seconds-ish, 6 to 8 seconds cooldown, stun, and it's great for chasing down enemies. at level 10 with Varian, what you can get is you can boost your attack speed, do the what's it called? Twin Blades of Fury, where he splits his swords out. He gets 100% attack speed boost. I mean, his attack damage gets reduced a little bit, but he also gets additional critical hits from his passive as well. And once you get to level 10 there, and if you go for the extra slow on his Q at level 1, he becomes a really great hero for kiting. It is really difficult to run away from him. He can stun you. You do a few auto attacks, then he slows you, a few auto attacks, and by the time you're chasing him a little bit longer, your stun's back off cooldown, and it's a gap closer too. So it's almost impossible to run away from Varian or like a team who's running with a Varian, especially too. Again, we're not going to get into the details. We'll get into more details about it next week. He's got, I think it's his level level 13. He can toss down a banner, gives you even additional movement speed for the whole team too. So you can use that to even like help your engage and your run in to chase a team. I know maybe that's not necessarily the ideal pick, but it becomes very difficult. In chat, we mentioned that Octoboss was saying that, hey, he's kind of like the new Illidan, and he is in a lot of ways. If you go that route, he's like the Illidan, he's like the Great Gwyn. He's got the gap closing, and he just can stick to you like you wouldn't believe, and he can output a ton of damage. The only problem I have with our High King of the Alliance is that he is a late game hero. Until he gets to level 10, he doesn't have that utility. Everything's kind of meh, that middle of the road, jack of all trades, master of none, but you can really spec him into being that crazy melee burst assassin too. So what do you think, Mystic? I'm not sure if you had much of a chance to play with or against Varian, the PTR. I played a ton of them, but those are my thoughts.
I've seen some gameplay of him, and he looks really strong, actually. And so at this point, I don't know if he's a jack of all trades, master of none, or if he's a jack of all trades, master of all. So it's time to, next week we will see.
I suspect, and it'll be good once we get another week in with him, but he's going to be jack of all trades, master of one, because I think that's what's going to end up happening at the end. Just with any sort of balance situation too, and this is goes with any hero, and it's a challenge that Blizzard always has, is that no matter what you do, there's going to be one talent tree that almost always comes up on top. It's going to be the preferred way to play a hero. It's going to be the more effective way to play a hero, and keeping those balance is going to be tough. I mean, it could, if it comes to the case where what my thoughts are, this kind of like melee assassin build is the stronger one. If they decide to nerf that, then maybe it'll make it more competitive with his other builds, but then they probably would have to buff his like tankier build, maybe give him a little bit more CC to be like that solo tank. But it's going to be impossible for having these 6 builds that Blizzard envisioned, 6 different play styles, and keeping them all balanced. There's inevitably going to be 1, maybe 2 that come to the forefront, and it'll be cool even if there's just 2. I think Blizzard will have their job done like in a pretty respectable way, because then that advantage that you have with a multi-class hero does come to the forefront. You can make those choices. I guess you kind of have to make them level 4 here, but in the draft it might not be apparent what you're going for, especially if you first pick Varian. You're like, oh crap, is he the melee assassin, or are they looking at making him more like a bruiser or tank? You don't know, so it can kind of throw people for a bit more of a loop there, and that is, I guess, one of the utilities of having this kind of multi-class hero, or a hero that has multiple kind of play styles involved in them. So we'll see how Varian shakes out, but those are my initial thoughts. And I know like Shiz couldn't be a hero this week. He had to bail like 5 minutes before the show too. That's one of the reasons we had to start late. He had a little bit of a family issue crop up, but we'll see him come back next week for sure and give his take on Varian. We'll do a full breakdown of Varian. We had so much to go through today. We're at about an hour and a half for the show. That's a lot longer than we wanted to go. We thought that leaving Shiz alone, not having him here today, was going to make this show go by super fast, but it is not the case. Apparently, me and Mystic can still hold a conversation like you wouldn't believe. So anyways, we've had some new people in chat today. Great having you guys in here. Please, thank you so much for listening. Feel free to subscribe to us. We stream live on Twitch. This Twitch channel you're watching on now, if you're listening to us, though not live, it's at twitch.tv/the Nexus Trolls. We stream every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 Pacific. And please subscribe to our show on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or wherever you happen to find your podcasts online. We're available weekly. Our weekly shows available in audio format there. You can also visit our website at www.thenexustrolls.com to watch this and past shows, along with past video streams, which can also be found on our YouTube channel. Links to the YouTube channel are on our website as well. So for announcements of the show and general Heroes of the Storm news, you can follow us on Twitter. We've got a Twitter feed at the Nexus Trolls. And finally, if you need to get in touch with us, the best way is to email us at podcast@thenexustrolls.com. If you send us an interesting email, we'll field it on the show as well. So please send in your emails. We'd love to hear from you. And Shiz, hopefully everything's going well with your family emergency. We missed you a lot, bud. We'll see you next week. And listeners, great hearing from you. Great seeing some new faces in there. And we'll see you next week as well. Thanks for listening. And that cues my favorite outro.
'Cause I'm TNT, I'm dynamite.